This episode of Podsession is brought to you by topnaturalhealth.com, your go-to source for nature-based supplements, skincare, and anti-aging products. Visit their site for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. Now here's your hosts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a case that's, it's captivated and baffled people for decades. The 1996 murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey in Boulder, Colorado. Happened the day after Christmas.
Yeah, a really haunting case.
Yeah.
And you shared quite a stack of compelling material with us. We've got detailed analyses of the ransom note, intricate timelines, even discussions from true crime forums.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to dive into these sources and try to extract the crucial insights surrounding this tragic and just enduring mystery.
It's a challenge for sure.
It is. And before we really jump in, just a quick word about our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com. Definitely check out their website or use the link in our description. They've got special discounted pricing on, natural supplements, skincare, anti-aging stuff. Worth a look.
Okay. So looking at the materials, what really jumps out immediately is just the sheer volume of detail, right?
Right.
And the multitude of interpretations around the single devastating event. We've got forensic analysis. We have evolving theories people are debating online. It's a fascinating, song or study in how a case can just stick in the public mind.
Absolutely. It really feels like trying to assemble a puzzle with half the pieces missing. And the pieces we do have, they sort of shift depending on how you look at them.
That's a good way to put it.
So to maybe get our bearings, let's just lay out the core of what we're examining. December 26th, 1996, JonBenét Ramsey's body is discovered in the basement of her family home.
Right. And this discovery happened after a 911 call from her mother, Patsy. She reported finding a ransom note indicating a kidnapping.
Yeah, and that initial report, even from the start, had some, let's say, unusual elements.
Definitely. For you to consider right from the outset, this lengthy ransom note found inside the house, that's unusual. The specific amount demanded $118,000, which, closely mirrored John Ramsey's Christmas bonus.
Wow, okay.
And the explicit warning not to call the police, which they did anyway.
Yeah.
These are all immediate flags or deviations from a typical scenario.
And the investigation that followed was, anything but straightforward, wasn't it?
Not at all. It got complex fast. You have the intricacies of the note itself, the crime scene specifics, the behavior of the Ramsey family right after. Then there's the DNA evidence that emerged later, and just this seemingly endless list of theories about who did it.
And despite, years and years of investigations, multiple experts involved, it's crucial to remember this case is still officially unsolved.
That's the bottom line. So in this deep dive, we'll be focusing first on that initial discovery, the timeline. Then we'll really get into the analysis of that ransom note. It's pivotal.
Right.
Then we'll look at the police investigation, the autopsy findings, who came up as suspects, the DNA evidence, of course, and finally touch on these ongoing discussions and theories that are still out there.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's start by nailing down that factual timeline, beginning with that morning, December 26, 1996. Around 5:30 a.m., Patty Ramsey says she found this 2.5-page handwritten ransom note?
Yeah, on the back stairs, stating JonBenét was kidnapped, demanding the $118,000.
And we mentioned that amount suspiciously close to John Ramsey's bonus. That detail just really stands out. And the note warned against calling the police.
But what's significant for you to note is, despite that warning, Patsy did call 911 at 5:52 a.m.
Okay.
And interestingly, the 911 operator later mentioned that Patsy's demeanor during the call seemed strange. That's something that's been analyzed a lot since.
So before 6 a.m., the first officer, Rick French, he arrives. He does an initial search, but, and this is key, he doesn't open the door to that basement room where she was eventually found.
Right. And the first detective, Linda Arndt, she didn't arrive until about 2 hours later.
Wow, 2 hours?
Yeah. So this delay in actually finding JonBenét's body, that's a really key element of the early timeline for you to think about. For several hours, the assumption was she was alive, missing, kidnapped.
Right, the focus was elsewhere.
Exactly. It wasn't until around 1 p.m. that John Ramsey and a family friend, Fleet White, did another search of the house.
And that's when John found her.
That's when John found her body
in
that spare room in the basement. And the scene was, incredibly disturbing. She appeared strangled, duct tape over her mouth and neck.
God. And then in a move that obviously raised eyebrows later regarding evidence contamination, John Ramsey removed the duct tape himself.
He did, and carried her body upstairs. Later that evening, 10:45 p.m., The coroner's team finally removed her body. And the next day, the coroner confirmed the cause of death, strangulation.
Okay, so what happens next? The family.
Well, the timeline shows initial cooperation. December 28th, the Ramseys gave hair, blood, handwriting samples to the police. Then December 31st, JonBenét's funeral was held back in Marietta, Georgia.
And the new year started pretty quickly with a media appearance, didn't it? January 1st, 1997, John and Patsy did a CNN interview.
They did. And throughout that, they maintained their innocence, suggesting, a killer was still out there.
But then, just 2 days later, January 3rd, investigators announced something pretty big about the note.
Huge. They announced the ransom note was written on a paper pad found inside the Ramsey house.
Inside the house.
Which strongly suggested it was written after her death. And reports also surfaced that day about finding a, quote, practice ransom note.
A practice note. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
That development, you can see how that immediately raises the possibility that the whole kidnapping story was, well, a fabrication.
Precisely. And the practice note just fueled those suspicions even more. So, handwriting analysis became critical. March 7th, 1997, the results came back. Experts concluded John Ramsey could be ruled out as the author, but Patsy Ramsey could not be ruled out.
Could not be eliminated. Okay, that's significant.
Very. And by April 19th, 1997, things had clearly intensified.
Yeah.
The DA publicly stated John and Patsy were now the prime suspects.
And then around mid-July that year, the Ramseys actually moved back to Atlanta.
They did. They left Boulder.
And the autopsy report, when did that come out?
That was released July 14th, 1997. And it provided more grim details for people to consider. It confirmed death by strangulation, yes, but also a blow to the head.
Oh, right.
And disturbingly, it indicated signs of sexual assault, an 8.5-inch skull fracture, blood, abrasions, bruising in the vaginal area, ligature marks on her neck and wrist, other bruises too.
Just awful. And there was other weird evidence at the scene too, right? Like the garrote?
Yes, adding to the complexity. An unusual garrote found around her neck, basically a makeshift weapon, made from a broken paintbrush, handled Patsy's paintbrush, and a piece of nylon cord.
Oh.
Investigators also found an unidentified bootprint at the scene, and, maybe most significantly for later developments, unidentified male DNA.
Male DNA. Okay. And folks, just taking a quick pause here to mention our sponsor again. If you're looking into natural health options, do check out topnaturalhealth.com. Supplements, skincare, anti-aging, they have a wide range, and you can get special deals using the link in our description. Okay, so back to the evidence.
Right, so these pieces, the note, the physical trauma, the signs of potential staging, this unidentified DNA, they all just weave together into this enduring enigma, don't they?
They really do. They offer so many possible interpretations, and they've been scrutinized intensely by everyone involved. So let's turn specifically to that ransom note now. It feels absolutely central based on the sources you shared.
It's undeniably a key element. And as your sources point out, initially both the police and the Ramseys seemed to believe whoever wrote it was likely the killer.
Right. The hope was handwriting analysis would just point to the person.
Exactly. But as we know, that didn't give a definitive answer regarding Patsy. However, the content and the style of the note itself, that's been subjected to incredible scrutiny.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, one analysis you included, using statement analysis techniques, it actually suggests the possibility the note isn't a real ransom demand at all.
Okay.
That it might have been written after JonBenét died, specifically to stage a kidnapping scenario.
Based on the language used.
Yes, based on several unusual characteristics in the language and structure.
And there are definitely unusual aspects, aren't there? I mean, first off, the length. It's really long for a ransom note, right?
Yeah.
Usually they're short, to the point.
Extremely long. And the content has these peculiar phrases, a group of individuals, a small foreign faction.
Yeah, small foreign faction sounds like something out of a bad movie, not a real crime.
It does seem theatrical. And also noteworthy for you is the line, we respect your business, but not the country that it serves.
What's the thinking there?
Well, it introduces this potential motive, political, maybe ideological, that just feels out of place for typical kidnapping for money. That doesn't quite fit the usual profile.
And the specific word choices, even the mistakes, people have picked those apart too.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that don't respect was crossed out and delivery was crossed out. The somewhat former phrasing like, in our possession, instead of just saying, we have your daughter.
Yeah.
And the use of the word hence, quite formal, right alongside obvious misspellings. It all raises questions about, the writer's background, their education, the real intent. The money itself, $118,000, presents another layer of intrigue for you. It's not just the specific amount mirroring the bonus,
Right.
but the instruction to withdraw it from your account. That's also notable. Usually kidnappers just want the cash. They don't care where it comes from.
That's a good point. And what about the phrase watching over your daughter? I remember reading some analysis on that.
Yes, some analysts interpret that phrase as significant. Using over might imply a sort of distance, not close supervision, which would be odd if she were supposedly alive and in their care.
So the interpretation is maybe the writer knew she was already dead.
That's one theory.
Yeah.
That it suggests awareness she was already deceased. And that connects to the repeated phrase, she dies.
Ah, right. The note says she dies instead of she will die if the demands aren't met.
Exactly. Analysts point to that present tense usage. It could suggest, again, a pre-existing knowledge of her death. One analysis even compared it to a line for the movie Dirty Harry.
Really? Wow. And speaking of potential influences, the punctuation, like the exclamation point.
Also examined.
Yeah.
The writer uses them for emphasis sometimes, but notably not when talking about JonBenét's death, which some see as more support for the idea she was already gone when the note was penned.
Interesting.
And the way John Ramsey is addressed also shifts, right? It starts formal, Mr. Ramsey, but then later it just says John.
Suggesting familiarity, maybe?
Potentially. Someone who knew him personally. And then you have that really enigmatic sign-off, Victory, SBTC.
Yeah, what is that supposed to mean?
Well, speculation abounds. Saved by the Cross is one prominent theory, given the Ramsey family's religious background and the word victory right before it, but nobody knows for sure.
So tying it back to the family, maybe the most direct connections are just the physical facts, aren't they?
You mean the paper and pen?
Yeah, written on their paper with their pen, found in their house. Handwriting analysis couldn't rule Patsy out. And weren't there other things like computer terms linked to John's job?
Yes, those links were noted. Computer terms possibly relating to John's profession, and of course the $118,000 amount. Plus that phrase, and hence. Apparently, it also appeared in their family Christmas message that year.
Oh, wow. And hence, that's quite a coincidence.
It's striking.
Yeah.
And one analysis you provided really scrutinized Patsy's explanation for using and hence in the Christmas letter, suggesting it's not a common conversational phrase, making its appearance in both places even more significant.
It certainly adds, another layer to this just deeply perplexing case. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the aftermath, the investigation, trial info.
Aye.
Or maybe the lack of trial info.
Right. Well, as we discussed, the Ramseys quickly became the main focus, the prime suspects, though they always maintained their innocence.
Uh-huh.
A really significant turn came with the discovery of that unidentified male DNA on JonBenét's clothing. Remember we mentioned that earlier?
Yes, the DNA.
In 2008, that DNA led the district attorney at the time, Mary Lacey, to issue a formal letter exonerating the Ramsey family.
Exonerating them. Based on the DNA?
Yes. She stated the DNA matched an unknown male found on multiple separate items of JonBenét's clothing, her underwear, under her fingernails, later found on her long johns too.
Okay, that exoneration, that's a huge development to understand. But clearly it didn't solve the case or stop the speculation.
Not at all. And we also had that really bizarre episode in 2006 with John Mark Carr.
Oh, right. The teacher who confessed.
Yeah, he confessed, but it fell apart pretty quickly. Inconsistencies in his story, and crucially, his DNA didn't match the profile found at the scene.
So he was cleared. What about JonBenét's brother, Burke? He was young at the time.
Burke was definitely part of the investigation. He was 9 then. He was interviewed, eventually considered a witness, not a suspect by police.
But theories involving him have persisted, haven't they?
They have, partly fueled by reports about that initial 911 call. There were claims his voice could be heard in the background, which seemed to contradict the family's statement that he was asleep. He actually later sued CBS over a documentary that implicated him, and they settled. And as we continue this deep dive, let's take another quick moment to remind you about our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com. Whether you're looking for natural supplements, skincare solutions, or anti-aging products, they've got a wide selection with special discounted pricing for our listeners. The link is in the description.
Okay, now we also have the perspective of Linda Arndt, the first detective on scene. What's her take, according to your sources?
Well, according to one source, Detective Arndt remains convinced the parents were responsible. She apparently found their behavior that night highly unusual, even strange.
Right.
Yeah, she reportedly recounted feeling genuinely fearful of John Ramsey's demeanor, especially when he brought JonBenét's body upstairs from the basement.
Wow. That's a strong statement from someone who was right there.
It is. And it's important for you to consider, While that's her perspective based on her experience and judgment, it's still her interpretation, not, a proven fact.
Right.
But it does highlight the suspicion that surrounded the family right from the start.
Definitely. And over the years, the theories have just multiplied, right? Public, experts.
Yeah.
Everyone seems to have an idea.
Oh, absolutely. They range widely. You've got scenarios implicating the parents, maybe Patsy in a rage, John covering up an accident, even theories involving Burke, like we mentioned.
Uh-huh.
And then you have the intruder theories. People like John Douglas, the former FBI profiler, initially suggested an intruder, though that was based on info from the Ramsey defense team and has been criticized. Another investigator, Lou Smith, was a very strong believer in the intruder theory.
So lots of theories, lots of investigation, but the stark reality is no charges.
That's right. It's crucial to acknowledge no one has ever been formally charged in JonBenét Ramsey's murder. There was a grand jury investigation back in 1999.
I remember that.
But it ended with the DA stating there simply wasn't sufficient evidence to charge anyone.
And the Ramseys themselves, their actions after her death were also scrutinized pretty heavily. Hiring lawyers right away, a PI.
Yes, they retained legal counsel and a private investigator very early on. They moved back to Atlanta fairly quickly, mid-July 97. They published the book The Death of Innocence in 2000, defending themselves.
Right. And didn't they do lie detector tests?
They did. They held a press conference announcing results of polygraphs they claimed proved their innocence. But these weren't FBI tests, and investigators didn't really accept them as conclusive. They also filed libel lawsuits against people, including a former detective and media outlets.
So the case just went cold.
Officially, yes, it remains a cold case. But as we know, it constantly captures public attention. New documentaries pop up. New analyses are done. The mystery just endures.
It really does. As you can see from this deep dive into the sources you provided, the JonBenét Ramsey case is just this incredibly tangled, complex web. Evidence, inconsistencies, questions that just stubbornly refuse to be answered definitively.
Yeah, the ransom note, those perplexing crime scene details, the family's behavior right after, the DNA evidence that points one way but doesn't solve it. It all contributes to this enduring and, frankly, heartbreaking mystery.
The analysis of the ransom note we talked about, it offers really compelling arguments that maybe it was staged, but then the timeline shows all these twists and turns in the investigation over decades.
And the fact that different investigators hold such contrasting perspectives, plus all the public theories, it just illustrates how incredibly challenging it is to reach any kind of solid conclusion here.
And the fact that it's still unsolved after all this time, it raises some pretty profound, kind of unsettling questions, doesn't it? About truth, about justice, about the impact of something like this on everyone involved.
It absolutely does.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, just one final reminder for our listeners to visit our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com. You can click the link in the description for special discounts on their natural health and wellness products.
And we'd really encourage you to revisit the sources you gathered on this, maybe even dig a bit deeper into the information out there. Keep in mind all the different interpretations and, the lack of that final answer. What aspects of this case, after listening today, stand out most to you? What parts do you feel need even more scrutiny?
Definitely food for thought. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration of the knowledge you've shared with us.
From all of us here at Podsession, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and don't forget to visit our sponsor, topnaturalhealth.com, for special promo code pricing on all of the products mentioned in this episode. See you next time!